Emmy, brass and green dragons, take two.
Emmy. No, not that. Not that at all.
We're having issues with your name today, James.
I think you'll find it's Drames.
Drames.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Emmy.
And welcome back to the Bestiary, Monster Manual A through Z or Z. And today we continue our dive into the realm of dragons with...
the green and brass dragons.
Yes, and indeed, as far as possible, we are trying to pair these dragons up by type and by element. The green and brass, though, are kind of our outliers, and I think perhaps we should start with why that is.
Yeah, we were looking through and designing these episodes and trying to figure out how are we going to do it? Are we going to do it all chromatic, all metallic? And then we came up with the idea of compare and contrast, since a lot of the elements tend to have opposition in personality as well. But then we came to these weird two outliers. So the green dragon is the only poison dragon in the monster manual. It has a poison breath. There is no metallic counterpart. But as far as the brass dragon goes, it is one of 3 fire dragons.
Yeah, so less of a kind of a complementary pairing as our others have been, and more just that these were the 2 we couldn't fit into a pair.
Welcome to the oddball episode.
Let's make them their own pair. Everybody needs somebody.
Including these guys, especially since these are some of our talkie dragons.
Yeah. Now, the reason for them not fitting as well together as you might think is, as far as we know and as far as we've been able to find out, poison as a damage type only came into D&D with 5th edition. And so it being a relatively new thing, it makes sense that there's only one kind of dragon that has it. But indeed, the thing they certainly do share is a bit of a chin wag. The green dragon is a manipulator, a schemer, a smooth talker. It's motivated by a desire to seduce and win creatures lesser than itself over to its way of doing things, over to its side, to become its minions, to become its allies. It revels in the idea that it is superior in terms of its wit and cunning. That sort of ego being the consistent thing among all dragons, but this is kind of how it manifests with the green, to the extent that, in fact, unlike some other dragons that prize materials and wealth in terms of their hoard, if anything, while the green dragon is going to love your emeralds and your shiny wooden carvings, it also really prizes the people that it is collected to be part of its schemes, and that it has succeeded in bending to its will.
This guy's really the embodiment of pouring poison into somebody's ear, in keeping with his element, of course. This guy keeps friends. And to the green dragon, being powerful doesn't necessarily mean being the face of everything. In fact, to the green dragon, it might be even more powerful to have the ear and the voice of somebody who is powerful. That way, they can be the person to take on the burden, and you can just quietly be the power behind the throne, manipulating them into doing something maybe they don't actually want to do.
Indeed. And being green dragons, they like to make their home in forested places where they can, again, bend the sort of very heart of nature to their will. This being reflected, I think, in the artwork that we see in the Monster Manual. These deep greens and almost blacks that you see, I think reflective, of course, of the nature side of things, but also of the colours of envy and manipulation and what we typically associate with poison. And even the pose, for me, exhibits that pride and that sort of self-satisfied look that perhaps comes with a successful manipulation or plan being enacted.
He definitely looks mid-speech. The way his arms are being held almost evokes the hand gestures people use when giving great speeches. And there's something about the color that almost seems soft in that almost ephemeral poison cloud sort of way. It's still nasty.
Oh, yeah.
He looks a little slimy. Everything about the way his scales move seem to go downwards. Everything about him seems kind of melty in that way.
The eyes as well, strike me as being particularly small compared to a lot of other dragons that I think kind of conveys that sort of, I guess I would call it sort of devious nature.
This guy is intelligent for a dragon. He's dexterous for a dragon. Just as a general rule, those are the stats that are going to be prized. He's very charismatic, and most, of course, with exceptions of white dragons, most are generally charismatic. But this guy is really extra smart and charismatic. He's a manipulator.
I mean, in fact, a green dragon, an ancient green dragon, has a 20 intelligence, which is even higher than that of an ancient blue dragon, which is kind of defined by its prizing its wit and intelligence and strategic mind.
Yeah. This guy doesn't seem to parade that, though. Again, this guy really wants to be behind the throne just a little bit more. He doesn't really need to be the general. He wants to be the guy right behind the throne, just being kind of gross, which is something I think is very interesting about green dragons, too, is that they're generally perceived societally as just kind of like, ew, those guys, though.
In fact, I like considering them almost as creatures of contrast because they are incredibly smart. They do see themselves as manipulators and they are very successful schemers. But to other dragons, the green dragon is rude and crass and boorish. And they are hunters and creatures that do not discriminate in terms of what they eat. They have a particular fondness for elf, but they will eat anything. And so for a creature of such high mind and capability, they're also quite animalistic.
They really have that sensibility of that gross power behind the throne character you see in a lot of books and television and movies, where he's got that sense of being able to manipulate because he couldn't really do it himself. And it's just gnarly, and you can get why he is not necessarily going to be manipulating other dragons. Other dragons probably wouldn't put up with it. He's really going to be targeting humanoids or other societies.
Yeah, and all of this combined makes them honestly one of my favorite kinds of antagonists, just the Machiavellian person in the shadows.
So going over to the brass dragon, these guys are also a little bit chatty, but in a different way than we've discussed with some of our metallic dragons before. I know we've talked about that most of the metallic dragons are a lot more conversational, at the very least, than their chromatic counterparts. They're far more actively involved with the people that they meet, and they're far more interested in conversing with them and, generally speaking, other dragons. But this guy like small talk. I'm sorry. It cracks me up so much.
He likes a good yarn, does the brass dragon.
He really wants you to tell him all about your last vacation and show you the photo album and tell you what was happening in every picture and give you the subtext behind every single one. He really likes water cooler talk. He wants to know more about the minutia of your life, is how I imagine that a brass dragon would think about it. It's, no, I really want to know the little things that make you you. But
yeah, these ones actually do want to know your life story.
Yeah, the whole thing, top to bottom. Tell me everything. I'm really interested.
When your lifespan can add up to several centuries, a puny human talking about 40 years, it doesn't seem like much of a demand. No, it doesn't seem like that bad at all. If you want to sit and literally talk for an entire day, it would probably love that. And one of my favorite character notes in this guy's description is that if you try and leave the conversation before the brass dragon is ready, it will
paralyze you with its sleeping breath. So, well, I realize put you to sleep with its sleeping breath. Those are different conditions, kids. And it will put you in a position where you can't leave, so it might bury you in sand or put its hands on you and wait for you to wake up and tell you to continue the conversation. You cannot
no. You need to understand, we weren't done.
Yeah, its priorities are much higher than yours, so it can be a little bit selfish, but to its mind it's not, which is just kind of weird and adorable to me.
Well, this is dragons. Their motivations and their needs are on another level, and so yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's not much to ask that you spend 3 days telling me about this thing.
Yeah, and looking at the art here at this guy's face, there's just something about the look on it. It's just, he looks pleased.
That's to me, that's a facial expression that just says, please continue, go on.
Tell me everything about that conversation you had last week with your mother-in-law. It does fascinate me. And the little pose he's into, he looks like one of those brass statues you see in little antique stores. He's just, I'm standing
very
straight.
Poised, very regal, quite expectant as well, I would say.
None of him is moving except for one of his back legs. It's almost creeping forward.
Or like he's just at the point where he's going to incline his head towards you, as in saying, please.
The wings.
Yeah, the wings cause the brass dragon to resemble like a gigantic metallic butterfly. Unlike other dragons where they're almost a separate limb, these look to be attached all the way down the body, which to me, along with the little beard he's got going on there, give the brass dragon almost like a more Chinese aesthetic, which I really like, actually.
And I like that beautiful butterfly aesthetic, that idea that he's kind of just this moth floating on the wind over a canyon. It lends to a very quiet aesthetic to him, which he absolutely would have, considering that he lives in canyons and he has conversations about small, little, intricate things. He's not very loud. He's not very in your face or anything like that. He's elegant.
Elegant is the word, I think. But yeah, this creature does like to make its home in canyons, which means that, you know, the burrow speed that it has makes sense.
I just imagine him just like, just being so pleased. I can burrow.
But yeah, think about it, because the older brass dragons may be sort of very dignified and elegant and sort of, please carry on with what you were saying. We have all the time in the world. But younger ones, especially newborn ones, wormlings, with that burrow speed, you can imagine just kind of popping up out of the earth next to you and being like, hey, what you doing?
How's it go? What you looking for? Who are you? What's happening? Where you been? Where you coming? Where'd you go? And I was also...
Why?
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 And this, I know, is something that both of us thought was such a funny idea, was the idea of an ancient brass dragon turning itself into a small child so it could go around and have the Y face.
Yeah.
In a town.
I mean, it would be the perfect cover.
Yeah. What you doing? Why?
Nobody suspects the curious child.
Of being a dragon. Oh, this idea, it's so funny to me. Although going back to the burrow speed, the idea of a gargantuan dragon burrowing.
I mean, purple worms can do it.
I know, it's still awful. It's still awful. It remains awful. That's so much. Again, him just popping up out of the ground, just, hi. Oh man, even if he's a good guy, like that's intimidating as all heck. And
just
then
exploding out of the ground next to you with greetings.
And it does know you're there, which is, the regional effects on this guy are very adorable to me. So to go backwards a little bit, to go forwards, these dragons, unlike a lot of other dragons, they keep their treasure piles not in one big area, but in lots of little areas. And this
guy has mini hoards.
It does. This guy is the primo geocacher. He's got everything and he knows where it is. He can remember. And he knows where all of them are, so if you mess with them, he knows. And the reason he knows is if you're in his territory, they have a way of telling where you are. So when you're there, footprints will appear in the sand leading towards helpful things like shelter or oases or bodies of water, and leading away from things that he doesn't want you to see, like treasure hoards. And if you go to a body of water, if you have an intelligence of 3 or greater, it knows that you're there. So if you're in the area of one of its treasure hoards and you start to dig in it, this guy might literally pop out of the ground and be like, "Hi.
Can I help you?"
What you looking at? Is it yours? I don't think you should take that."
Which to me is quite a nice parallel to the green dragon, in that, the green dragon can convince forest creatures to kind of spy on you, so it will probably always know where you are as well. So I think that's quite a nice compliment.
A nice balance. Even though they may not balance exactly the elements, these guys are.
They do share some things in common.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us this week on The Bestiary. How have you ever gotten a green or a brass dragon to just leave you the heck alone? Tell us about it in the comments down below. And while you're there, you can click on our links for our social media. And if you want to show us just a little bit more love, you can check out our Patreon. Goodness knows we would appreciate it. You can subscribe. And here are some more videos for you to watch. And join us next week when we conclude our series on dragons.